There is a true necessity for startup and for scale-up to rethink a bit the operating model, and data being something that can be costly if not well managed is not escaping this need for rigor. There is a shift between velocity and governance that is moving toward more governance. We did 3 types of action. The first one is pretty obvious. That is how we can better track costs of the team.
Today, I welcome Edouard, who is data director at Aircall, the French unicorn, which provides a fund system fully integrated with all the tools such as the CRM and such. Today, we will talk about a challenge that Edouard faced and is probably still facing, notably how to adapt your data strategy to the current economic environment. So, hello Edouard, how are you?
I'm good. I'm pleased to be invited for the second time.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you back on the podcast. So I was saying how to adapt your data strategy to the current economic environment. So when I called you, you told me that this was a topic which was important to you as a data director at Aircall, but also just as a data leader, because I think most data leaders are facing this challenge today, which probably drives a change in strategy as a whole. Can you tell us a bit more about the context around this change?
First, I think what's interesting as well in my experience is I joined the company 4 years ago. So I lived different phases of the company. I lived the hypergrowth phase. I live now when the expectations of the market are a bit changing. So I think that basically, I just wanted to share a bit how we, at Aircall, we interpret this change and how we are currently adapting. So I spent some time on LinkedIn reading articles about data in the past weeks, days, listening podcasts. And one big message that has been shared by the tool providers, by the consulting firms, that is basically one good way to adapt is to implement a super risky and ambitious strategy that is going to data mesh, to decentralize the team so that you can lower the cost of the team and put more responsibility on the functional side. I think this is a super good ideal. This is not pragmatic enough. And at Aircall, we decided not to do that, but to adapt differently. And basically, I'm convinced that we need to be a bit more pragmatic and try to think of how a data team can get more control of what's happening. And more control means not decentralizing, but actually more centralization, more governance, and something that is potentially more healthy for a future that can be more decentralized after. So maybe to come back, so the ecosystem has conscientized in a way that growth at all costs is not viable anymore. So there is a true necessity for startup and for scale-up to rethink a bit the operating model. And data being something that can be costly if not well managed is not escaping this need for rigor. What's changing a bit in a way Aircall overall is functioning and working and taking decision is that there is a bit less velocity. We think before acting and not acting and then measuring and then decide if we continue or not. Secondly, we are centralizing a bit more the operations in the company. So before we had 3 poles, EMEA, North America, APAC. Now the operations are more globalized and centralized. So this is a bit simplifying the organization. And we have the willingness to invest into long-lasting projects versus projects that are good for the short term, for the growth, but potentially a bit problematic in the future. The main conclusion of that is the company is more simple. There is a shift between velocity and governance that is moving toward more governance. And this is potentially easier to do data right now and to get functional knowledge for someone that is technical than acquiring the technical knowledge for someone that is functional, because we are moving, changing system, changing processes. So it's basically reshuffling the data model and it's changing a lot. So it's not easy for someone functional to follow all these changes.
If we get into really more the actions that you've implemented in terms of data strategy or within the data team.
We did 3 types of action. The first one is pretty obvious. That is how we can better track costs of the team. The second one is how we can better structure projects, that actually understanding all the dependencies with the rest of the teams. And the last one is how we can shift the culture toward more control and governance. And I'm going to start with this one because I think this is a prerequisite for the other initiatives. So cultural shift is basically, we decided to take a bit more control of the plane. Before we were actually serving the leaders. Let's take an example, the CMO. We were serving the CMO toward the marketing strategy. So we were thinking, okay, what do you plan to do right now? And to do that, what are the metrics that you need to follow? And we execute the list of metrics that the CMO wants to track. Now we are shifting a bit the governance, basically not working for leaders, but having a central governance that is shared within the leadership team, where we define, where we explain what are the KPIs that we track, where we define, where we actually write down the definitions, and where we share, okay, now you're talking about net retention. Net retention, the only definition that you need to look at is this one. This is the query that this is where you can access the information, and this is shared with everyone. So the idea is to get one single source of truth for the whole company of KPIs, big KPIs that we track. So we have one central definition, and when we say net retention, for example, there is only one definition.
There is one benefit, which is that if you start to have like a broader view, and that for one KPI you will do it once, and all the company will follow it, instead of maybe having to go like really personalized with each different department, you will rationalize the data team efforts. So this is how a bit like also you think, okay, on the long term, this is really more like scalable to go that way.
There are actually two benefits. So first benefit is this one. The other one is we can actually focus on what matters at the company level, because we know what are the KPI that matters. And then we can decline all our strategy of observability and data quality based on that. Resource, data source, and attribute that is impacting the important company KPI. We are actually creating custom monitor on it. On the communication that we are doing on potential incidents, we are also focusing on data where it matters. I think it's also helping the team to focus the effort on topics, KPIs, and data that matters at the company level, and not the short-term strategy of some leaders or operational teams. When you are running a team that needs to be extremely close to the operational leader, basically you are a bit forgetting the technical side of things. So you are creating new pipeline for every new use case, and you are not thinking on what the big picture and how you architect the main offer that you're providing to the company. So we shifted that. So I think like you have the idea, the cost control, there is a lot of article around it. And obviously it's something that we implemented at Aircall as well, is basically a better tracking of the cost on the compute side, but also the budget and SaaS that we are using, and challenging if the trade-off that we've made in the past on we pay to get a service is still relevant right now. And last, there is an effort that you don't put so much during the high velocity phase, is optimizing the queries. Like let's start with this one. We mentioned in Instacart, they did a massive presentation on how they reduced their Snowflake cost from 50 million a year to 20 million a year. And basically there is nothing incredible. It was just put more control and optimize some query. This is what we did as well. So we decided to invest time into query optimization, but not doing by yourself. We are in limited resources. So basically we were thinking how we can streamline that. So we were partnering with a company that is called Aria, that is basically using Gen AI to identify queries that are not optimized, and to test the potential optimization of it, and to do it in parallel and massively. So they are taking a query, suggesting an improvement, testing the impact on the cost, and if it's still the same result. And they are able to do it like massively. And sometimes it's not super complex, but to do it automatically, like you're just saving costs, a lot of time of data engineering. We have some queries that we can improve by 30-40%, like easily. The second axis was we decided to do some migrations of tools that were actually too expensive for us. So for example, we had Segment. Segment is known to be expensive. So we decided to migrate to RudderStack that is less expensive. And because the way Segment was pricing us was not scalable with the business model, they're pricing by number of events. And there is a super intense usage of Aircall by your customers.
Too many events.
Yeah, exactly. Too many events.
So maybe just for those who don't know these tools, I think Segment is some kind of a big box where you can do a lot of things. But in your context, I think it's mostly used to track the website event. So basically it's the tracking tool to collect the data from the product. And so RudderStack is another alternative than Segment, who is probably the leader on this category, or one of them.
And we did also other trade-offs. So we had previously some tools that we used to calculate some metrics, and we decided to cut it and to internalize. So we have several examples like that.
And so maybe just in terms of context, you mentioned it, but in the beginning with Aircall, since you were in a high velocity phase, because you were like scaling really, really fast, you decided to go full buy option in terms of build, and basically you completely embraced in some way, and this is how I like to say it, the modern data stack approach with all like the most modern tools which enable to go fast, which usually have a low complexity in terms of technical skills. So tools such as dbt, of course, that we have talked about a lot on the podcast, but I think also maybe Fivetran in terms of ingestion, etc., etc. So this is not an episode on the modern data stack, but
I can talk about Fivetran because we did also several optimization on that. So I think one of the downside of the modern data stack was I fetch the data and then maybe it's going to be useful in the future. So we had several use cases where we were using Fivetran to collect the data to store within the warehouse. And we had a super low usage in terms of use case of it. I can give you an example. So we are using Jira within the engineering team. And basically, they have the ability to do their own monitoring dashboard within Jira, within the tool. And this is super operational on the number of tickets. We had the ability to go further, getting the data into our warehouse Redshift with Fivetran, and then creating some dashboard for the QA and for the engineering team. But basically, the ROI was not super good. Getting data from Jira is the Jira API is strong, is big, and we were like it was taking I don't know 30% of our Fivetran credentials for a usage and for a value that was not really impressive. So we decided to put most of the monitoring within the monitoring tool that Jira is exactly. And to stop collecting data from this source. And we did this choice for other sources that we had, for example, for the staging version of some tools. But basically, I think that one of the big optimization that actual modern data teams can do is it worth the investment to get this data into the warehouse and to store just in case it can be useful one day.
That's very interesting. So it's really like to take time with the team to think about optimizations, but at all levels. So it can be like a change in tools to start building it internally, but it's also like within the tools to really challenge how it's set up.
Yes, to give you an example, last example that we didn't do, but that we plan to do is we have Looker as a BI tool. We have a high usage of Looker within the company, and we are going to challenge a bit today what are the permissions and rights that everyone has within Looker for two reasons. The first one is we openly share a lot of content historically, which is not always needed. So we have some people that basically don't have real need to use Looker, but they are using it. And we have people that are creating dashboards, and we need to put a bit more of control on the content that they are creating for other teams because it needs to be maintained. So in terms of run, the question is how we can provide a service that we can maintain at a good level, even if a lot of sources and processes are changing. And this is probably the next big step is to optimize the way and to rethink the way we are using Looker as a BI tool in the company. The last topic was the consciousness on where we invest our effort and how we put a strong governance. So we have the chance to have a central team. As we have a central team, we have also the possibility to do arbitrations between project and topic. So what we've done is that with my boss, the CIO, we started to create a company-wide process of project prioritization, where basically everyone is sharing projects and where there is a governance to review and to prioritize them. Okay, I can give you an example. I have a project around call quality to improve call quality in the company. I think this is absolutely crucial to do it in the way we are serving the customers because we are providing a phone service, a phone system. And now you need to express the need, explain why you are doing this project, what are the goals, what you expect it as a benefit, and we can give the possibility to the leadership team to define, okay, call quality is important, but there is more important topics. So basically, these other topics need to be prioritized. There are some topics that we try to optimize, and everything that is not within the company-wide priorities, we need to do trade-off, and we need to accept not doing it. So I can give you different examples. So when there is a project that is relatively small and that can be done at the operational level, we accept not to do it. But it's just super clear that we are not maintaining then the data product that has been built using Looker or the dashboard that has been built. The second one is the support. I don't know if we talked about that, but we also have an offer that is supporting the rest of the organization. They're creating tickets, we're answering tickets because they need data for decision or for something. And there is a question on how we can also automate the way we are doing support, just providing the skills to the rest of the organization, but to do support, not to do super ambitious projects and products. And I think that there is a trend on how we can transform natural language-based questions into queries. So I really think as well this is a trend that we need to follow and to test in the coming months.
So I will be happy to do another episode if you manage to crack that. So I'm sure everyone is interested into this topic. And it's really interesting. And I'm thinking about two things. The first one is when you say that you've implemented this process to prioritize now at a global level, and I mean, in doing so, to deprioritize some projects, this probably creates a lot of frustration. What is the best way to tackle that?
No, this is like really truly this is what was the most complex part of it, is how we can accept not to kill a project, but to deprioritize. Not saying that it's not important, but it's just that we don't have currently the resources to do it, which is super different than before, because before we had an important topic. Okay, the topic is important. We hire someone to do it. Now it's just how we can be more conscious in the effort that the company is making toward the important project. And we know that there are a lot of important projects that we are actually not doing. For me, one thing is you need to provide the full picture to the leadership, saying this is a full list of projects that we are actually doing. We have company-wide priorities, and we force every project leader to link the project with company-wide priorities, and we review it, have every quarter a prioritization review with the leadership team that we are doing. But yes, where I'm aligned is that it's requiring effort to make sure that we have identified all the projects and all the topics that we need to address, and to get the agility to change the scope if needed and to adapt to the new constraint and so on, but also making sure that we communicate enough all the choices and decisions that we are making. And this is really tough sometimes.
How would you measure the effort that you've put into this as a team over the past maybe quarter?
I would say not half, but the quarter of the time of the team, between the migration project, between investing time into some optimization, between creating some company-wide process and trying to implement and to follow them, plus the big project that we mentioned on consolidation of KPIs and talking to other data leaders. I'm absolutely not the only one prioritizing this type of initiative right now.
So you've discussed about like the challenge around aligning the leaders with the prioritization and the communication. Is there any other main difficulty that you faced during this whole process that you could share?
I think we touched it already. So it's the prioritization and change management about how it's working right now. One big thing that we've done to enable that is that we have created a team that is called strategic planning and transformation, that is basically monitoring all the effort of the company toward the strategy. And that is helping set the rhythm, making sure that we have the proper meetings around it, that we are following the project. We have invested into a team that is built to do that in a way and to enable this alignment. And the second one, we already touched it a bit as well, is change management. We shifted also a bit the way we are serving the internal teams. One of the difficulty we had is, as we were in a phase of decentralization and trying to make team autonomous, there are several products, several dashboards. I say product, but it can be dashboard, it can be anything, that haven't been built by the team, but that we need to maintain right now. So this is also this ownership of the current existing offer that we try to rationalize. Okay, maybe this dashboard is not super useful, so let's try to stop it. Okay, this use case is not super useful, but as we weren't owner of the use case previously, just taking twice or 3 times the time to understand, even if we have the usage data, because everything is based on the compute that we have on the warehouse, it just taking a lot of time.
Edouard, we are arriving at the last questions. So actually, I'm happy because these questions were not framed exactly the same way when you came on the podcast like 1 year ago or 2 years ago, apart from one question, but I will ask it again anyways. So let's go. Is there a resource you'd recommend? I know you have a lot of wisdom around resources, so maybe a book, a blog or anything?
Yeah, I think last time I suggested a pretty technical book. So let's do the opposite way this time. One of my favorite leadership books is called The $1 Trillion Coach. So it's basically the story of Bill Campbell, and it's written by his mentees that actually like super impressive people, like the previous Google CEO and so on, that are actually explaining how he's approaching coaching and how he helped them taking the right decision, but not knowing what they are doing. He was a baseball coach, I think, at the beginning. He was not knowing anything about tech, about managing a company. He has just some basics on how you manage a team, how you set a strategy, and how you organize the effort. This is one of my favorite leadership and management books, and one book that I recommend to a lot of people in the team that are taking or want to take management or leadership responsibilities.
Okay, I will put it in the comment and probably buy it. What do you like most in data?
I think mostly two things. The first thing is it's kind of a representation of the world. It's a good representation of the world, and it's also an enabler to transform the society and the businesses in many aspects. So for the business, but also in our personal life. It's extremely interesting and fascinating ecosystem, super dynamic. So I'm also part of Modern Data Network, and then we see that there is a lot of extremely interesting questions around how we use data. So it's actually there everywhere in your life. So basically what I like is the fact that is the mirror of the world, and that is not only a mirror, but also a solution to many of the challenge and problems that you have.
What made you progress most?
I think this is people. I have so this is my personality. I have a genuine interest in people. And when you're doing data, you're at the service of others. If you're doing data by yourself, you're not helping anyone. So you're not serving the global questions. So I have a genuine interest into people. So people that can be the people who are working with, how they feel, how they think, how they take decisions, how to approach them, because collaboration is key when you're an enabler. Plus people that are actually the team you're working with. I think the best way to learn is not to learn as a student over the book, but to learn to understand the world, to understand to understand the people, the way they react, the way you can be better at collaborating and creating value with them. And it's also helping you to grow a bit outside of your comfort zone, not theoretically, but practically.
And last, what is the best advice someone ever gave you?
I think that advice depends on the personality and what you need at some point. So there is one that I remember quite often that is basically important for me. So we run some personality tests to mostly everyone at Aircall, and the result is I'm a blue person. Blue is super analytical thinking. I need to go into details, and I look for perfection. And the advice is good is enough than perfect. That is a bit challenging my own way of thinking, and that's important to move forward, to try to drive change, and to not always wait for perfection before moving forward. So you can see it in all the discussion that we had is basically how we can be a bit pragmatic in this world where a lot of people are actually idealists.
How did you say the advice goes?
The advice is good is better than perfect.
So thank you, Edouard, for coming back on the podcast and to also accept to try to do this episode in English. So maybe for those who are still here, and also for the French-speaking audience who's used to listen to the podcast in French. So the idea was to try to produce a few episodes in English, particularly when we are working with people who have sometimes international teams. So the idea is to see if it makes sense to share this content a bit more broadly. So thank you, Edouard, and see you soon.
See you. Ciao.